Greetings. Live from the global stage, welcome to the Moorish International League Forum, where law defines status, not opinion. Tonight, we gather under the authority of the Moroccan Universal Supreme Imperial Council to explore questions of nationality, jurisdiction, identity, treaty law, international standing, equity, and the historical foundation surrounding Empire of Morocco and Moorish jurisdiction. This is not entertainment. This is a legal, historical, and educational forum dedicated discussion, researches, and documentation and dialogue. This broadcast across nations, cultures, and community around the world. Welcome to our official international legal record of form of Empire of Morocco. Prepare yourself for a powerful night of scholarship, testimony, analysis, and international discussions. Tonight, featuring topics including U.S.A. versus U.S., sovereign citizen versus paper terrorists, Moorish versus Indian, statehood versus statelessness, Possidetis Juris versus Postliminium, and citizen versus national. Future respect speakers, researchers, judges, ministers, and national representatives from multiple organizations and international community of the Empire of Morocco. Now let the record reflect. The forum is officially open, and as we open with an affirmation from Jennifer Lynn L.
Islam, divine creation.
She went out, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, she's coming.
Islam, yeah.
Islam.
Divine creator of all truth, wisdom, balance, and righteous order. We come before you tonight in the spirit of this podcast, seeking clarity, knowledge, justice, and higher
If you're
understanding.
speaking, you're on mute.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear Jennifer.
I can
Can
hear you loud
everyone
and
hear?
clear.
I can hear you.
Okay,
Okay.
Islam. As we continue, Most High, we ask that this gathering be guided by wisdom and not ego, by truth and not confusion, by peace and not division. Allow every speaker, every listener, and every soul tuning in to this broadcast to receive insight with discernment and understanding as we discuss citizenship, nationality, law, status, sovereignty, jurisdiction, and identity. Let us remember that true power begins with self knowledge, self discipline, and spiritual awareness. Help us to speak with integrity, listen with open minds, and move with honor in all that we do. Protect this platform, protect the families represented here, and protect the minds of each and every one of us and the people that seek in truth. Let this tonight panel awaken critical thinking, responsibility, unity, and divine purpose within our communities. May justice be rooted in righteousness. May wisdom overcome ignorance. May truth stand firm above opinion. We give thanks for this opportunity for all of us to gather here tonight in learning, dialogue, and elevation. To all of you that is watching us tonight around the world, may peace, balance, protection, and enlightenment be upon you and your households. In the spirit of divine order, truth, reciprocity, and harmony, we open this panel tonight and form with gratitude and reverence. Ashe, Amin, and so mote it be. Islam, thank you. And now I'll pass it back to Minister Mia Moore Bay. Islam.
peace, and greetings to all the nation, all people, all indigenous communities, and all those joining us tonight from around the world. I am Wazir Mia Bay of Elodie, Rock and Pradium, Ante, Michigan. We thank you for being present for this historical international broadcast. This platform was created to encourage lawful discussion, historical examination, education, diplomacies, and constructive dialogue regarding nationality, identity, status, treaty history, and international legal principles. Tonight's purpose is not division. Tonight's purpose is understanding. We encourage every listener to research deeply and study carefully, remain respectfully, and approach each topic with wisdom, patience, and discernment. As we proceed, we ask all participants to listen, to maintain order, and to keep a professionalism and honor throughout the discussion. At this time, we will begin with our first featured topic and our first featured speaker, Wazil Yahya Bey. Thank you.
Islam and greetings. Indeed, it is a honor to speak with you. I am Yahya Abdul Rahim Bey, the Wazir El Reyes, that is governor of New Andalusia, the provincial government in the Moroccan Empire at the territory of the corporate jurisdiction commonly known or commonly called the state of Florida. It is an honor to speak with you briefly, as it is, on the topic of Moors versus Indians. However, my approach will be from a unifying point or bringing together the Moors and Indian, as opposed to the normal conversations that tend to separate us and dilute our strength. Consider the following statement attributed to the former FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, that served in that role as director from 1924 until his death in 1972, wherein he said, "The greatest threat to the internal security of the United States among Black extremist groups is the Black Panther Party." Now, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover made this statement in his fiscal annual report in 1969. Then, on December 4th, 1969, J. Edgar Hoover, along with his agents, drugged and murdered the most prolific and prominent leader of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. Those of you who don't know who he is, you should look at his story. Though there were several dominant or dynamic leaders in the Black Panther Party at that time, none had been able to reach the people and the masses of Chicago like Fred Hampton. That is, he was the original founder of the Rainbow Coalition, as he was bringing together, or he did bring together, Blacks, poor whites, Puerto Ricans, street gangs, etc., in his effort to fight fascism. Now, these are the early beginnings, as I say, of where we're at today. That is the unification of Moors. Now, what is my point? I will demonstrate in the next 5 minutes how the artificial conflicts and false dilemmas created by the colonizers are their oldest and most effective tactics to defeat us. No matter what you claim as a national identity, the colonizers see us all the same. Why? Because whenever he encounters us, he finds within us the same spiritual connectedness, the love, the truth, the peace, the freedom, the justice. Therefore, he found it necessary to divide us in order to conquer us. For we are the true majority in the world. Now let that sink in. On the world stage where the empire reigns, we are the majority. Never are you a stranger in any land that you may traverse. However, the colonizer is forever and always a stranger. He's always a foreigner. So for Moors and Indians to find their unifying principles, we must consider how we got to this point or to this division. First, your Moorish heritage has been denied, covered up, copied, whitewashed, rebranded as Indians and as Blacks, as African Americans, as Negroes, as people of color. Freemen, all types of names. But mum's the word when it comes to Moor. However, the laws written alongside the history don't always match up, thereby giving a glimpse of the cover-up that has occurred. In the book, Citizenship of the United States, Expatriation, etc., at page 460, and I recommend everybody go download that book because it gives up so much information. But anyway, it says that Moorish subjects, which would be Moors, lost their nationality only by becoming naturalized in or protected by another country having treaty relations with the Moorish Empire. Therefore, the Moors of North, South, Central America, and the adjoining islands have been subject to colonization by way of naturalization, and thus their nationality subject to change. But then I would say to you, look at the Anglo-Moroccan Treaty of 1856, where in fact the statement used for the statement that is made with regards to most favored nation applies to all of the colonizing countries. And therefore, not just here in North, South, and Central America and adjoining islands, but around the world, the naturalization of Moors, as again, you are the majority. So let's not confuse the naturalization or adoption as, for instance, we've been adopted as Americans and we've worn that title proudly until we figured out, gosh, man, we were never really, say, ingested or fully brought into that system. And for reasons, because actually we weren't supposed to be subordinate. We were the superior in the initial contract, that is the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Again, read that Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787, and then again 1836, where it was renewed for perpetuity. But then you ask the question, so what about Indians? Where do they fit in all this? Were they part of the naturalization process? And I would say their process must be defined as amalgamation, assimilation by the process of integration, and not integrated as people, but as a governing structure. That is, though they were placed on reservations with their governing bodies, they were still interdependent on the United States jurisdictionally. That is, as an example, if a Indian, and I really don't like using that, So let's say one of the tribesmen, because we don't diminish whether you are a Choctaw, Chickasaw, or whatever the tribe is. That word or that term Indian is a misnomer. It's a brand that was placed upon the Moors that were here when the colonists arrived. Uh, so yeah, you still can maintain those tribal names, but remember, you are not an Indian. That's what somebody else defined you as. Before that, you received your protection from the Moroccan Empire. Before the colonists got here, you were a Moor, part of the Moroccan Empire. Now, that's documented history. That's why we're going through what we're going through today, giving you information so you can go back and now you can actually do the research yourself. But anyway, I'll go on. It says where the Moors were only naturalized until such time that they chose to reclaim their nationality and reestablish their sovereignty and independence or their governments as a continuation of the Moroccan Empire, not to be confused with the Kingdom of Morocco. And you find that in the Treaty of Madrid, 1880, paragraph 15, where it says Moorish subjects who were naturalized in foreign countries, if they choose to return to Morocco, they simply need to submit to the laws of the empire, simply submit to the laws of the empire, and thereby return to or regain their nationality. Otherwise, they remain naturalized. So even in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1786 or 87 and the Anglo-Moroccan Treaty of 1856, they clearly defined jurisdiction and procedures that placed the Empire of Morocco in a superior position and the colonizers in a subordinate position. Unity is the concept that we must embrace. That is, coming together, recognizing that we are one, and not just here on this continent or the southern continent, but around the world. We share a unifying spirit, a divine spirit. And it matters not what tribe you come from. As I said, you can be Choctaw, Blackfoot, Crow, Seminole. It doesn't matter. Where do you receive your protections on the international stage is what matters. And again, according to the book on the citizenship in the U.S. and the expatriation, it said that Moors only lost their nationality only by becoming naturalized or by receiving that protection. And that applies to everyone around the world. So now we Moors, Indians, African Americans, blacks, colored, Puerto Rican, Spanish, Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, Latin Kings are all within the Moroccan Empire and have the right to a nationality and to define our political, social, cultural, and economic development. Our Moroccan Empire is inviting you to return home and join us as we uplift fallen humanity. Join us as we demonstrate the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice in their highest form. And with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. My time is up. The next speaker will be Dr. Yasharon Bey of Unami Buffalo Nation, Ante, Pennsylvania, Islam. Are you there, Dr.?
Greetings, 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 greetings. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you for the information. That was great, great information. Islam Moors, Islam nationals, and Islam officials. This is Dr. Yeshua Nakasha El Rose Bay, the matriarchal councilwoman for the Republic of Unami Buffalo Nation, for the territory commonly known the corporate district of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Welcome. My topic is on the United States of America, the Republic, versus the United States Corporation Company. Now, a lot of people don't know this information because this information, even though it is broadly out there for people to consume, is very difficult because social media is a conundrum. It's a conundrum, and if you go down the wrong path of information, you'll be deceived. So I'm going to give a brief introduction in regards to the difference. Well, the United States of America, the Republic, is a government for the people. It was established by the people for the people. And then you have the United States Corporation Company, which is a corporation. It is not a government. It is a corporate entity. The difference between the two is in the name. The Republic is, it says in the Constitution, every people deserve a government of their choosing. Now, when we talk about a corporation is just businesses, corporate entities coming together to form a corporation. Now, the United States of America was dissolved. The Republic was dissolved in 1871. Some say it was because the United States of America Republic was dissolved, was insolvent because of the war. There's a lot of information out there to try and get you to think that it was just that basic. And this short introduction is not the platform to actually go in depth about the difference. Now, if you look at what's going on in society right now, you'll understand the difference. Look at what the corporate president, now the president of the republic, Donald J. Trump, the president, Donald J. Trump. In 2016, this is what they say. In 2016, when he became the president of the corporation, he dissolved it. And there's so much information out there today to give you that information. Not only what he's doing to free the people and to dissolve the corporation. There's two other differences in regards to the United States of America, Republic, and the United States. Some people call it the cabal. Some people call it the deep state. There's a lot of names for the corporation versus the republic. So I'm just going to use republic versus corporation. Now, a corporation is, I mean, that's 101. Everybody knows what a corporation is. It's a business. It is put in action to create finances and wealth for its corporation. And I wish I had a long presentation to give you to kind of show you slides so you could see what I see. And what I see from what the typical person sees is a difference. I have friends that will go to bat for the Democrats versus the Republicans. When we think about the Democrats versus the Republicans, well, a Democrat and a Republican, if if we were currently in a republic, there would be no such thing as a Democrat. Two parties of a corporation, two individual parties doing completely different things, even though they do the same thing. But what I want you guys to understand, I'm going to give you an example. An example, citizenship. Well, a corporation can't give citizenship, can't naturalize or nationalize anyone. So when we think about ICE agents, what's going on right now with ICE agents going out there deporting all of these so-called citizens, well, if the United States corporatized in 1871, there were when that was first established and the Republican Party and the Republican form of government was dissolved, that meant anybody who went through the naturalization process to gain citizenship, you're not a citizen. You can't be a citizen because a corporation is not a government for which can be granted. So everybody is up in arms about the ICE agents and what they're doing, and they're wrong. You cannot be naturalized or given or granted citizenship through a corporation. Now, the Republic, the United States of America Republic, can grant citizenship, can grant naturalization processes. That is called public law. The United States Corporation Company creates negative law, corporate policy. So that's why everybody since the Act of 1871 has been catching it with legal processes and home ownership processes, because as a corporation, and every citizen who claims to be a part of the United States now has absolutely no rights, only contracts. So that giving you one example. Another example, think about taxation, the difference between a Republican form of government and a corporation. Well, the corporation right now, you're in a corporation and coming out of that to a republic because of what? The taxations. We are taxed to death, to death. Everything that is a fee is a tax. Under the Republican form of government, you cannot be taxed the way that you're taxed under the corporation. So that's another quick example. Let's take courts, for instance. You have constitutional judiciaries of a government, and in United States corporation companies, you have administrative or statutory tribunals depending on the entity. So, to give you an example of today's current moving into republic, is every time you turn around, you are being going through an administrative process based on statutory law. Again, laws that were not, that every law, let's just say it this way, every law that has been passed since 1871 is a statutory regulation codes ordinance. It is a corporate policy, but the only individuals that are subjected to that policy are corporate entities, not people. People have sovereign rights protected by the Constitution for the United States Republic, not the corporation company. So when people go into the tribunals and they stand on nationality and they stand on jurisdiction, trying to fight against that corporate entity. But the unfortunate part of that is you're in a tribunal. You're in an administrative and statutory tribunal, depending on the entity that called you in there through the invitations based on whatever you received in the mail. Now, let me give you an example of the republic versus corporation. When you receive mail, these are invitations. These are invitations to contract with you. They're not presented that way. They're presented coming from a government entity, but is a corporate it is a corporation company trying to get you or invite you to contract with them, and they're being deceptive because they're hiding under the false pretense that they are a government entity. Now let's take and I'm giving you examples so you can understand. Reading the Constitution for the United States Republic is the best way for you to be able to understand your rights and the rights of, in the laws that protect you. So for instance, where's the example? Because y'all got to let me know on time because I can't hear anybody else speaking. So when you go to purchase property, when you go to purchase property, okay, somebody's on. Okay.
No, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I'm hearing somebody coming in. Okay, I don't hear you again. So let me just get back to where I'm talking about. A corporation or contracts, a government is your rights. And in a organized Republican government, you have rights. In a corporation, you only have corporate policies, and they attach themselves to you through contracts. So what Donald Trump is doing right now is destroying the corporation as we speak right now. If you listen, if you read his executive orders, watch the right broadcasts and not the wrong broadcast. But again, you're not going to be able to understand the differences because you are not because social media, and they call it legacy news, is steering everybody in the wrong direction. But if you stay grounded in reading the Constitution for the United States of America Republic, you'll be able to understand the differences. Because as a person with no knowledge from school, no knowledge from community, and being in this matrix, this corporate matrix, it is very difficult to discern from the two differences. It's very difficult to do that. Um, and I'm not going to belabor it because I don't know if I'm short on time. I'm not going to belabor the point, but I'm going to move it over and introduce the next presenter, which is C. Simone Selkep Bay L, the Wazir for Paul Opala, and I yield. Peace and love.
Islam and Shukran. Um, I am C. Simone Selket Bay El, Wazir of Pal Opi Allah. And today I want to talk to you guys about paper terrorism and sovereign citizens ideology. As we all know, the sovereign citizen ideology has been closely meshed with the Moorish movement for probably the last 20 years. I want to take us back to 1971, where the sovereign citizen movement first was created. A lot of people think that when you say you're a Moor, police, judges will automatically assert the term sovereign citizen, right? The moment you say, hey, I'm a Moor, hey, I'm Moorish American, hey, I'm Moroccan, anything that goes outside of their bubble, they will scream sovereign citizen. What I find most comical about this is how that movement initiated. So, taking you back to 1971, we heard from Yaya Bey earlier about 1969 and some of the things that were transpiring then. So, I would ask you to think, if all of these things are happening in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there must have been some sort of internal revolution to prevent us from being who we are. In 1971, William Potter Gill started the sovereign citizen movement. This was a white man. This is a European, a Caucasian man. His ideology and principles rest on the fact that all government autonomy goes through the authority of the sheriff. Now, this thought process is not so jaded if you have history and knowledge that takes you back to the 1800s. So, in the 1800s, the West Coast specifically, and that's where we are here at Paul Opi Allah, the West Coast was ran by what was called an Al Qadi. An Al Qadi was what you call a Moorish judge, a village judge. Their responsibilities extended from, um, judging criminal cases, civil matters, wills, probate, mediation, um, taxation. A al Qadi had the capability to do anything and everything because the community trusted that person to handle those affairs. There were three al Qadis across the West Coast. And you could just imagine three dots, one in the top West Coast, one in the center West Coast, and one at the bottom West Coast. That single person had the authority to govern everyone, and they were respected in that manner. The very last Al-Qadi, I believe, was in 1856. Don't quote me on that, but Google is your best friend. And that Al-Qadi wound up being a William Blackburn. William Blackburn was I wonder if you guys can get this, a Mason. So his goal was to remove a single person form of government and create multi-layered government. Once he became the last Al Qadi, that is exactly what they did. They transitioned that position into a mayoral position. And then they created city council, they created a sharif, they created deputy sharifs. They broke down the government in so many layers that no one person could have power or authority. This was to create difficulty getting any remedy, right? Imagine if in the 1800s, you could go to your Qadi and say, hey, my father passed. Here's his will. Can you sign this? The Qadi looks at the will, he looks at the signature, and you're on with it. Today, you go to the court and you say, hey, my father passed. And they say, okay, you're going to have to enter into probate. We're going to assess you 20% of whatever it is that they have. And you got to get an attorney, and we got to take the sheriff to the house to close down the house until we've deemed it appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. So, us today, that's a lot. That's stress. And that's exactly what they wanted. So, how does this roll into the sovereign citizen ideology? Because William Potter Gill, he was no idiot. He recognized that there were layers and structures that were illegitimate. So, his problem was that he didn't have authority on these earthlands to make these claims, right? He was not from here. He was not of this land. He could read, he could write, and he wasn't dumb. So he knew something wasn't right. So he started pushing the movement with white people. White people started banding together saying the laws are not real, this is not real. And that has been their movement since the beginning, since 1971. Now, what happened was Moors got more educated, and they started reading and they started seeing the holes that William left behind. Huh, William's a European. He's not a descendant of a Moroccan in America. So, how could he make these claims? As we started to represent and represent ourselves with more noise, the way they shut us up was by calling us paper terrorists and sovereign citizens. Those are the two big bold letters that scares everyone. Once you get branded with that term, you get fearful to continue to press on for yourself. So then I ask you, what is paper terrorism? Well, now they say paper terrorism is sending in any documents. You send anything in, and they want to label you as a paper terrorist. There's a fine line here because legally and lawfully, we have to know what our rights are. We have to know that, no, I probably shouldn't send in 15 1099s. That probably isn't going to push well. We have to know that, no, I probably can't get out of my car after I've been pulled over and cuss out the police officer because he's not a sheriff, right? There's a very fine line with understanding. Now, what do I do? Do I instantly go and lean the officer? No. That is where they categorize us as paper terrorists. Do I give notice that I've been violated first? Yes. Do I file a tort claim with risk management because there is a administrative process how they handle their people? Yes. Now, once I've exhausted those remedies and they are not adhering to law, then that's when the sword comes out. That's when the scimitar comes out. We have to be very careful at how strategic we are to not be labeled these things that were not created for us. The sovereign citizen term was not created for people of color. And that's the first thing that we need to stop and pause. The moment you hear someone say sovereign citizen, if they are a Moor, if they're Moroccan, you need to say, hey, bro, you cannot be sovereign and a citizen. Sovereign is to be under no one's rule. A citizen is to be under someone's rule. So I would ask you how conflicting that term is. I really encourage you guys to look up this history and this research, because it'll really clarify how that's not even our argument or our conversation. It has nothing to do with us. They can blame that on William Potter Gale. And I yield. I'm handing it over to Aziz Hano Bey, Islam.
Greetings and thank you, C. Simone Selket Bayel. My topic tonight is statehood versus statelessness. Good evening to all in attendance. Today, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm here to ask you some questions, because the right question backed by law can dismantle decades of misunderstanding in seconds. Again, the subject is statehood versus statelessness. And by the time of this, you should know exactly where you stand. Question number one, if you describe yourself as a color, what nation are you legally connected to? Let's answer that with law. Under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15, everyone has a right to a nationality. A color is not a nationality. A label is not a nation. So if your identification is based on a color, then legally the question becomes, where is your state? Question, what happens if no state recognizes you as a national? Here's the answer. Under 1954, the Convention on Stateless Persons, you're considered stateless. If no state recognizes you under its laws, that means there's no diplomatic protection. You don't have any enforceable international standing, and no state is obligated to defend your rights. You may exist physically, but legally, your protection is very limited. Another question, are the terms like Black, African American, Negro, Indian nationalities in international law? And the answer is no. There are social administrative classifications under international law. A nationality is a legal bond between an individual and the state. This principle is reinforced in Nottingham case of 1955. Nationality must reflect a real connection to a state, not a label. So if the label does not connect you to a state, then it does not establish your nationality. Here's another question. If you're not attached to a state, who enforces your rights internationally? Answer, no one is obligated to protect your rights or enforce your rights. Under international law, enforcement comes through states. Let me repeat that. Under international law, enforcement comes through states. The United Nations system operates through states, not individuals alone. That means rights exist. However, enforcement requires a state to protect you. Without that connection, your rights are often dependent on local systems, not the sovereign protection of the state. Let me repeat that again. Not the sovereign protection of the state. The state is the sovereign. You're protected by the state. Next question. So what does it mean for your children and your estate? The answer, everything. Under the Hague Convention of Nationality, 1930, nationality determines a person's civil status and legal status. If you lack recognized nationality, your estate is administered under local jurisdiction. Your heirs inherit under the same framework. There's no continuity attached to your lineage.
Apparently, he's having some technical difficulties at this time. So,
Islam.
Islam, we're gonna we'll go to the next speaker and we'll bring him back in. So the next speaker will be Chief Kwazi Amor Michelle Bay.
Thank you. Islam, I'm Amor Michelle Bay. I'm Chief Kazi or Chief Judge for Palopia Law Nation State. I represent the judicial branch of our government. We have a shared territory with Washington State. I'm going to be discussing Possidetis, Juris, and Postliminium, and I'll compare the two for a little bit. Possidetis, Juris is Latin for as you possess, so shall you possess. It's a principle of international law that maintains that the boundaries of newly independent states inherit their pre-independent administrative borders from their former colonial or administrative powers. So we're a new state, Palopia law. We're a new state, but we're returning to our ancient Moroccan empire, which is, very old. But we are a new state, newly formed state. We have our new constitution, our new flag, our new seal. So we would definitely need these protections under international law. So wherever the original people of the land existed before the colonizers occupied the land, those Aboriginal or indigenous people inherit that land and all administrative powers that existed before the colonization. So administrative powers is just a fancy way of saying governance, jurisdiction. Basically, it's the authority vested in the government to enact and enforce laws, manage public policies, direct the daily operations of the state. It means basically to govern our own affairs within our own government. The main purpose of Possidetis Juris is to remove any confusion about who governs that territory, who governs that geographical location. So there's no confusion, and it's like, okay, so these people over here, they're the original people of the land. They have a right to govern their own people. They have a right to enact laws. They have a right to enforce laws. They have a right to keep track of their certificates of, we won't say birth, but born, or the nationals that are born within their nation. They have a right to keep track of that. Basically all paperwork, basically jurisdiction, basically take care of our own affairs. So no one can basically tell, nobody over here can come up to us and say, hey, Palopia law, that's it, pack it up. They can't do it. We have the right to say, nah, you pack it up. Okay. Our ancestors were here first. Okay, so we don't want to confuse Possidetis Juris with Possidetis, and I'm going to explain the difference because sometimes you might look up Possidetis Juris, and I done that, and it Possidetis popped up, especially in Black's Law Dictionary. So I want to go ahead and talk about the difference. So, Possidetis is a term in international law that states where whatever is occupied or acquired in war, each party gets to keep unless a peace treaty states otherwise. That goes against the United Nations Charter. That goes against, equity law. That goes against basically common sense. That's like somebody stealing your car and you go to the police and say, hey, that's my car. This man stole my car. And they say, well, he got it. He got your car and ain't nothing we can do about it. That's BS. So it's illegal when it comes to Possidetis Juris in the international community. No other country can basically help those occupiers illegally hold your land, illegally hold those things, because it goes against international law. It goes against the United Nations Charter. It goes against, like I said, common sense. It goes against equity law. That's not equal. Equity is based off of basically treating someone how you would prefer them to treat you. So if there's something that you've done wrong or something that a country has done wrong, they have to make it right. And Possidetis Juris actually supports that. So I'll move on to Postliminium. Okay, so Postliminium is Latin for return to previous status. You might also find just Postliminii. So they're basically the same thing. So you might find Postliminium when you look up Postliminium, or you might find just Postliminiii, and they're the same thing. The terms are the same. So Postliminium is a principle in international law that deals with the restoration of rights after a temporary interruption, like colonization, military occupation, those type of things. So once that is over with, once you've regain your sovereignty, you've come back to your nation, at that point, Postliminium will kick in and everything is returned back to you. Your status is returned back to you when you return back to your nation. All of the legal rights you had before with your nation, all of your lawful rights you've had before. And I don't really like to use the legal term because we know there's a difference between lawful and legal, but it covers everything basically. So I'm going to go ahead and read the definition for Postliminium. Postliminium is a classic principle of public international law dictating that when a territory or people are freed from enemy control, their original legal rights, status, and property are automatically restored as if the occupation never happened. They return to the control of their legitimate sovereignty. This derives from the ancient Roman civil law, where returning captive legally regains property and suspended citizenship once freed. And then in our case, the status would be a national. We like Wazir Simone said, citizen. That doesn't really apply to us. I think it was Simone that said that this day. Okay, so that operates under the maxim X. And I might butcher this, but I'm going to do the best I can. Ex injuria just non oratur. Law does not arise from injustice. That's powerful. Law does not arise from injustice. So you can't create a new law to take over something. Like I said, it goes back to equity law. If it doesn't apply to, hey, let's make it right. We're doing the right thing here. We've wronged these people. We have to correct it. Then it doesn't fall under equity law, and it doesn't. And Postliminium is gonna win in that case. So with Postliminium, the returning sovereign can use this international law to nullify any laws, taxes, or judicial sentences imposed by the colonizers. So that means once we're done with them, and then we have our people that are wrongfully jailed and they're sitting there waiting for somebody to come and help them, they can count on us, because there won't be that other administrative power, that other the colonizers, or that other occupation here to get in the way of what we're going to be doing. And even now we have rights to help. And that's why it's so important to not just nationalize, but also to take an oath of allegiance to an actual state, as Wazir Hano Bey mentioned before he disconnected. It's a state is very important, and that's why we're doing this, because we want to help our nation and we want to actually grow the states. We have about 6 or 7 now, and we need more, so that's why we're doing that. Okay, so the legitimate state, which is us, um, we resume exactly where we left off before the occupation began. So it'll go back and we'll be able to enforce our laws. We can do that now, of course, but we'll be able to, within the whole territory of, Turtle Island, all of Morocco, we'll be able to enforce that, and actually worldwide eventually. As Wazir Yahya mentioned before, that doesn't just cover this territory here or Turtle Island, it covers the entire world, because we are primogenitors. We're the first here. There are Moors everywhere, but it starts here. This is the very first, I would say, civilization when it comes to the United Nations 215-93 already put it out there that the Washita Moors here are the first indigenous people on the planet. And that's why if we're here, it's always first on, always on. Okay. Now, one thing we do have to remember is that what is built upon the land and extracted from the land goes with the land. That means law and land go hand in hand. Bloodline and land go together. It's called jus sanguinis, right of blood. The colonizers have built nothing on our land that can't be removed. So we have to get that out of our head. Oh, they're too big. This, that, and the other. It's already crumbling. It's already coming down for us to take our place, our rightful place. So remember, there's nothing that these colonizers put up here that can't be removed, torn down, or shut down. And that's what we're working on. Okay, so nothing they have on our land is affixed to our land. Our land can't be bought. It can't be sold. It can't be traded. It can't be stolen. The only thing bound to our land is us, and we're bound to it by blood. So just remember that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and discuss the difference between Possidetis, Juris, and Postliminium, because I know they kind of sound the same. When you think of it, they're all geared towards the same thing. It's helping us decolonize. Okay, so the focus of Possidetis Juris is permanent boundaries of newly restored or new states or restored states geographically. So it's basically establishing permanent boundaries for us. So there's no confusion of like, hey, okay, there are Aboriginals, but where does their land actually start and begin? It's basically where our ancestors lived, and that's all. That's worldwide. So wherever ancestors lived, that's basically, of course, I would say like the Chinese Moors over there, they're going to have to do their part over there. I would say the, Australian Moors over there, they're going to have to do their part over there. But as far as the boundaries are concerned, we've taken anti-Washington. So we've taken this particular geographical location and created our Palo Pila state. The others have created theirs. We'll say Ampam, Mia Moore, she's the wazir over there. So they've taken over that particular territory. So that's what they mean by Possidetis Juris, is focusing on permanent boundaries for the newly formed states, and also the people that currently, well, I don't like calling them administrative powers, but okay, the ones that do have the administrative power right now, we can't actually tell them that they administrative yet. We have to move for that. There's a use anybody and think, hey, Possidetis Juris, that means that you can't do this, you can't do that. Like C. Simone Selket Bay said, said, we have to be very careful how we move and how we interact with these people. There aren't going to be any consequences, because there will be. So, of prior rights and status, like I mentioned, and our rights to govern, our rights to. Am I still on?
Yeah,
someone came in.
On,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost done. And that's triggered by independence or state secession. So that's basically independence was us, restarting, or secession, them stopping. And then Postliminium is triggered by termination of military occupation. So once we get to the point where the military occupation is no more, or we've taken back over that particular um, arm of the U.S., then that basically will put us back into the Postliminium. Okay, the key goals is for Possidetis Juris is to keep the peace between the new states and the prior administrative powers. That's why they say, hey, you can't, you can take over your and govern your people and everything like that, but the administrative powers, the corporation, they still have a right to define their states until we go to court, and otherwise it is no more. Basically, they'll be given the boot and told, hey, under Postliminium, under Possidetis Juris, the Moors on that land have a right to make you leave. Okay. And so the similarities between the two are to support restoration of government and status for the original people of the land, that's Aboriginals, Indigenous, and then that basically is supported, or it supports the decolonization process. So that's what we're all aiming for anyway. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking. That's why we've created our states, and that's why hopefully you're here to learn more. So I want to give you guys a real life example before I land my plane. The real life example of Possidetis Juris and Postliminium and how it's worked in our favor, or can work in our favor. In July of 2024, the ICJ, that's the United Nations International Court of Justice, ruled that Israel's prolonged occupation of the Palestinian territory is entirely unlawful in international law. Basically means the ICJ told the Israel's that their stay in like Palestine is over. They have to go. So we're thinking it's over oil. You know, I admit I was confused and everything until I read about this, but it's basically, it has already been used, and that was only a couple years ago. So it's not an ancient Latin term in international law that doesn't apply today. It applies today now. It applies just a couple years ago. ICJ told Israel, basically, your prolonged occupation in Palestine territory is over. You have to leave. And they told all the other countries that are involved with the United Nations, the members of the United Nations, those countries that basically you can't support them. You're not supposed to support them. This is what we've said, and it's time for them to go, and nobody give them aid in staying in a territory that doesn't belong to them. And I just want to close by saying, if there wasn't anything that we can do on our land and to decolonize our land, they would have never lied to us. They would have told us, you guys are the Indians, or you guys, they wouldn't even told us that. They would say, you're Moors, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. We're here to stay. They lied to us. They put lots of money, lots of energy, lots of time creating books and movies, and we see us coming on ships and all this other stuff and thinking that stuff is real. And they got even museums and stuff with fake little ships and stuff like that, and they'll tell us it's a diagram or something like that because they don't want to lie too much. But well, they don't want to lie more than they already lied. They can't put a fake boat out there or a ship out there and say this is the one you actually came on. So they would have never lied. So we have to keep that in mind. When I first found out I was a Moor, that's the first thing I asked myself. I said, why did they lie? I said, why did they lie? Why didn't they tell us that we're the ones that were here first? They conquered us, and there ain't nothing we can do about it. And I got my answer. It's because there is something we can do about it. And that's why they were afraid. That's why they killed the Black Panthers. That's why they put it in schools, that we came on ships. That's why they've done everything that they've done to hide the truth. So if you, anytime you feel like you're in a position where they're too big, or what are we going to do, or I feel like I'm in this fight and I'm not getting anywhere, remember that they would have never lied to us. And with that, I land my plane, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Ampam's Sayaraha, Jennifer Lynn Ill, Islam.
Point before Islam, Jennifer, before you go on, we're going to pass it back to Aziz Hano Bey, because he had technical difficulties when he went out, and he didn't get a chance to land his plane. So
Thank you, Mazimir. I don't know when I got cut off. Can you
Okay.
tell me?
At what point?
I don't know when I got cut off.
You got cut off at the part when you, the second question part, when you asked the second question.
Second question. Oh my goodness. At the very beginning, I asked about 7 questions.
What we're
Oh
gonna
wow.
do? We're gonna let Jennifer Lynn L go, and then I'm gonna come back in and tell you you'll go after her, and I'll let you know where you stopped at.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Islam, everyone. First, thank you so much, Chief Kazi of Moor Michelle Bay. That was so excellent. So, again, Islam, peace and love, hotep, and namaste, everyone. Tonight, we are diving into one of the most discussed and misunderstood subjects in modern political and legal conversation: citizen versus national. Many people use the word citizen and national as if they mean the same thing. But legally, historically, and internationally, these terms can carry different meanings depending on the context and the laws being discussed. A citizen is generally understood as a person who has full political membership. Now, listen, you all, when you hear membership, think of like a privilege, a belonging when you hear that. So, a citizen is generally understood as a person who has full political membership within a nation or state. Citizenship often includes rights such as voting, holding public office, and receiving protections and responsibilities under the laws of that government. A national, in many legal systems, refers more broadly to a person who belongs to a nation, people, or state by birth, allegiance, origin, or legal recognition. In some countries, a national may not always possess every political right of a citizen, but is still recognized as belonging to that nation under international law. This conversation becomes deeper when begin asking questions like, what creates political status? Is nationality connected to ancestry, geography, or legal paperwork? And can nationality exist without citizenship? How does international law define these terms? What role do treaties, constitutions, and jurisdictions play? These are powerful questions because status affects identity, jurisdiction, rights, obligations, and how governments interact with people under law. So, one perspective argues that citizenship is a political relationship with the government, while nationality is connected to national origin, heritage, or allegiance to a people or nation. Now, another perspective, you all, is that in many modern states, citizenship and nationality are legally merged together and function almost identically. The important thing tonight is not simply accepting opinions, you all, but studying definitions, examining historical documents, understanding constitutional law, and learning how international these terms. So, for example, think of a passport and travel. A person born in the United States is usually considered both a U.S. citizen and a U.S. national. But there are people born in certain U.S. territories, like American Samoa, who are considered U.S. nationals, but not full U.S. citizens, unless they go through a citizenship process. So, you all, that means they owe allegiance to the United States. They can carry a U.S. passport, but some voting and political rights are different. So, this shows nationality and citizenship can sometimes be legally separated. Now, example two, political membership. Listen to the membership again, you all, which is like a privilege. How can I explain it? Let's citizen equals political membership in a government system, and national belonging to a nation or people. Example, someone may identify nationally by ancestry, tribe, or heritage. But citizenship is what gives participation inside a specific government structure. So, one idea is citizenship deals with government participation, nationality deals with national belongings or allegiance. Now, another example, It's like international law, you all. Now, under international law, nationality is often the legal bond between a person and a state internationally. For example, passports, they usually state your nationality. International treaties often use the word national governments, protect their nationals abroad. So when traveling internationally, nationality becomes very important, you all. And the last example I'll give is a historical example. And historically, many empires and kingdoms recognize people by tribe, nation, clan, allegiance, and territory. So before modern citizenship systems even existed, you all. So that means nationality concepts are older historically, and modern citizenship systems become more formal with nation states and constitutions. So think about it. Many people never stop to ask the difference, you all, between being politically attached to a government versus nationally attached to a people, culture, or nation. So tonight we'll explore whether citizenship and nationality are always the same thing, or whether history and law show distinctions between the two. So a breakdown: citizen, that equals political slash legal member of a state. And national is a person belonging to a nation or recognized under a nation internationally. Now, as always on this platform, you all, we encourage research, respectful dialogue, and critical thinking. This platform is about knowledge, not confusion, education, not fear, and understanding the importance of lawful identity and status in today's world. So, as we close tonight, you all, build on citizenship versus nationality. Let us remember that titles, labels, documents, and systems may define how governments identify us, but they do not fully define the divine essence of who we are. Citizenship is a political status given by a state. Nationality speaks deeper to identity, heritage, origin, and connection. But beyond both of those, there is the spirit, the living consciousness within us that existed before paperwork, before borders, before man made institutions. So tonight, we want to stand in the energy of truth, balance, order, reciprocity, and divine law. We encourage our listeners tonight, you all, to study, question, research, and seek wisdom within discernment. Awareness is power when it is guided by power, truth, and responsibility. Spiritual awareness teaches us that we must know ourselves beyond the surface. So, know your history, you all. Know your rights, know your responsibility, and know your lineage. But most importantly, know your spirit. Because the people disconnected from their spiritual awareness can easily become disconnected from their power. Let this conversation tonight inspire you not to move in fear, confusion, or division, but in wisdom, discipline, love, and higher consciousness. The greatest freedom begins within the mind and soul. May we continue to walk in divine balance, protect our families, uplift our communities, and seek truth with open hearts and awakening minds. So, thank you all for tuning in, and stay grounded, stay aware, stay sovereign in spirit. Now, it's my honor to introduce Wazir Yashua Ankh Bay El from Manu Manhattan, Anti New York, Islam.
Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I am Yashua Ankh El of Anu Manhattan Palladium, Ante, New York, and I'll be doing not only the closing prayer of return, judgment, and divine remembrance for us this evening, and I'll also be doing um, the biblical foundations of equity, land, justice, and inheritance. And the prophet said, do not put away your Bibles, Moors, because they'll be needed, especially in times like this. Because even though you could be quoting from, the Circle Seven or the Holy Quran, some of our brothers and sisters with good hearts and who wish to be of service are still in the church, and they too need a divine spark of what you would call inspiration. So the following scriptures referenced are offered a spiritual foundation and balance of fairness, inheritance, boundaries, stewardship, restoration, and just dealing. They are presented in plain language so that the principles may be understood and remembered. First book of Joshua, first chapter, verse 3 through 6, for lawful possession through divine grant. Many places in the Bible, the children of Israel were given instruction to aggressively, even violently take over land. But in this instance, they didn't have to hurt anyone. They were told to possess it because they already had the divine will and instruction, right? And that divine will and instruction was kept in trust. So when they say in God we trust, that is also an equitable term of a legal standing because the children of Israel were the beneficiaries of God's will. Okay? So that the land promised by the divine authority requires courage, faithfulness, righteous stewardship. That means, don't be a bully, even though the land is already part of your inheritance. You must govern and rule it justly with fairness, and an impartial mind. Book of Genesis, 15th chapter, 18th verse, inheritance established by covenant. The plain language, the covenant creates a sacred foundation for inheritance, promise, and lawful continuity. That means that even after one generation has come and passed, then it is properly transferred, that wealth and inheritance is properly transferred to the next generation. But that next generation don't just receive it just like that. They must be properly instructed. They must be properly trained so that the land and the inheritance is not taken from them, and they know how to defend it and protect it. Islam, uh, Deuteronomy 19, chapter verse 14, the protection against removal of land boundaries. In plain language, one must not unlawfully move or disturb the boundaries or the markers of another. Our most ancient ancestors had something called a geodetic survey. And that geodetic survey was a measurement of certain lands and boundaries, right? So that you knew what nation was in charge of what territory and where the line and boundary of another jurisdiction, if you will, would take place after a certain line and boundary. Um, Proverbs number 4, the preservation of ancestral landmarks. In plain language, ancient boundaries and ancestral landmarks are to be honored and preserved. That's book of the chapter of Proverbs, 22nd chapter of verse 28. Number 5, Leviticus, and that is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 35 to 36. Just weights and measures. In plain language, just justice requires honest measures and truthful balance and fair dealings, which means you're not using trickery and pretending to give value in order to receive value that is value of ill-gotten gains and unjust enrichment. Number 7, Proverbs, false measures is an abomination. In plain language, a false balance is offensive to the righteousness, but a just weight is pleasing. That means you continue to deal in fair dealings. Number 8, uh, Numbers, chapter 27, 8 through 11, rules of inheritance and succession. In plain language, inheritance must pass in an orderly and lawful manner when succession is required. Number 9, Numbers chapter 36, verse 7, inheritance not to be all alienated. In plain language, the inheritance of people should not be wrongfully transferred away from its rightful line. The sister, and it was mentioned in other instances where when someone would pass, then because the property was in will and not in trust, the courts would take over and basically galvanize and fleece the estate of the deceased before it is passed over, which is considered an abomination, an abominable act. Leviticus number 25, verse 25, chapter 25, verse 10, Jubilee and restoration of land. In plain language, there is a sacred time for liberty, restoration, return of land, and inheritance. We are coming upon what we call decolonization. And when your Moroccan states decide to step forward and take the responsibility for proper stewardship and governance of its people and protection of its people, the land returns back to its rightful heirs and under proper and lawful governance under the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Act of Algeciras, etc. Leviticus number 11, chapter 25, verse 23, lands and stewardship, not absolute ownership. In plain language, the land is ultimately held under divine authority, and human beings are stewards and sojourners. And also, in other words, as in the Act of Algeciras, Article 60, when land is to be transferred, not only that transfer is to be overseen and signed off by a Qadi, but the land and transfer of land is also to be between two living persons, and a corporation could never be a living person. So if a property is being transferred to an entity that is not living, then that deed transfer is void, ab initio, as of 1906 of the Act of Algeciras, Article 60. And number 12, Exodus chapter 22, verse 1 through 4, the restitution required for wrongdoing. Otherwise, all equity sees that what ought to be done is done. Even if it happened a long time ago, equity can reach back non-pro-tunc and correct it for its present time. In plain language, wrongdoing requires restoration, repayment, correction, according to the nature of the harm. So with that, I'm getting ready to close out with the prayer of remembering and the prayer of return, judgment, and divine remembrance. Islam. In the spirit of the Circle 7 Quran, all holy Allah, the one God, source of all creation, mother, father of the universe, architect of the seen and unseen, we bow not in fear, but in remembrance. We come not as lords of the earth, but as servants of thy divine will, clothed in humility, in accord in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. O Allah, who loosens the keys in the appointed hour, who reveals wisdom when the time is fulfilled, who gives thanks that the veils have been lifted and the hidden things made known unto the nation, as thou did prepare the forerunners in every age, so hast thou prepared thy servants in this later days to warn the nations, to redeem mankind from ignorance and sin, and to restore the ancient everlasting truth. Let every heart remember its origin. Let every nation return unto its own vine and fig tree, that none shall make them afraid, and all be one with thee, thy mother and father, Allah. O Allah, cleanse the places of judgment upon the earth and remove from the courts Men of all corruption, pride, falsehood, and bondage. Let no shadow dwell where justice is proclaimed. Let let truth and alone enter, and let righteousness alone remain. Awaken ancestral wisdom within those who sit in authority. Restore law not merely written in ink and on paper, but the law inscribed upon the soul of mankind from the beginning of time. Seal every judgment in balance, anchor every decree in equity, crown all law in thy eternal justice, that heaven and earth be reconciled as one. O Allah, teach us to honor our fathers and our mothers, that our days be lengthened upon the land which thou hast given us in trust, and guide us to walk uprightly, to know who we are, and to live in accordance with the divine covenant. And let this prayer stand as a witness, and let it move in harmony with thy will, and let every word spoken in truth return multiplied in righteousness. So it is decreed, so it is established, and so it stands by thy authority, O great God Allah. Islam, Ameen.
I mean, Islam.
mean,
All right, Islam. We're gonna go back to why to Wazir Hano Bey, uh, so he can continue his before we hear our final statement from Yahya Abdul Rahim Bey.
excellent. Thank you very much. I am Aziz Hano Bey of Skuru State Republic, Wazir Arez, also the Prime Minister, in the shared territory of the colonial state of North Carolina. We stopped at question number 4. Question 4: if you're not attached to a state, who enforces your rights internationally? Answer: no one is obligated to. Under international law, enforcement comes through states. The United Nations system operates through states, not individuals alone. This means rights exist, but enforcement requires a state to protect you. Without that connection, your rights are often dependent on local systems, not the sovereign position of your Moroccan state. Question 5: what does this mean for your children and your estate? Answer: everything. Under the Hague Convention on Nationality, 1930, nationality determines a person's civil status and legal rights. If you lack recognized nationality, your estate is administered under local colonial jurisdiction. Your heirs inherit.
I see everybody is, like they say, frozen. So we got Wazir Hano Bey is having his technical difficulties once again. So we're gonna just sit here for a minute in silence and see if he gets to log back in. And for a minute, give him at least a minute to try to log back in. And as we wait for Wazir Hano Bey to come back in, we ask the audience to take a time to reflect on the things that you have heard tonight, um, and take the time to look into all the information that was brought to you tonight. You will find your truths in it, and like we say, always do your own research so that the information can become your own and not something that you heard someone say. So with that, I'm going to yield and reflect myself on the information that I heard from all the speakers. And we'll give him 60 seconds to see if he can come back in. If not, we'll see what we do after that. Uh, Sarah Raha, Jennifer Lynn L. Is you froze also?
No, Brother Yaya is going to go ahead and close us out. Islam.
Okay. Islam. That's why I make sure. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead on and have a closing affirmation from Wazir Abdul Rahim Yahya Abdul Rahim Bey. Islam.
Islam, indeed. As we close out, in the name of the Creator, in the name of the All, we thank you for this opportunity to come together to share the thoughts and the ideas of the brothers and sisters here that reflect the Moorish states that have come together. We thank the Creator for guiding us to this point, bringing us from those dark places into the enlightenment. So we thank the Creator for binding our hearts together in love and bringing our minds or our thoughts together in the quest for freedom as the true heirs of the land return to their proper position. Let us work together in the uplifting of fallen humanity. We'll be guided by the divine decree of our Lord. And as been stated here in all the information that has been shared, let it be used for the good of us all. Let it be that we leave this place and we share with others that they too might be guided to the Moroccan Empire, to the local states, to reunite, to join together, and to bring us back together so that we will reform our government that has a place that is set, has a no start and no end. It goes back from time immemorial. And therefore, as long as we continue with open hearts of love and positive thoughts, we will continue to share as we leave this place. And we say, in the name of the all, Islam, Ashe, so mote it be. Peace and love, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Ashe.